IVM.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. We have, I think, a really interesting session planned up from what, the pre-discussion that we guys have been having. First up, I'd like to introduce Ashish. Ashish has been CEO at the erstwhile Delhi FC, Delhi Dynamos, and currently called Odisha FC in the ISL. He has also worked with Chennai and FC in the past, and currently he is the founder of Dynamic Sports. Say hi, Ashish.
Hi everyone. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yep, pleasure is ours. Also, I'd like to introduce you guys to Rahul Rodriguez. He has been the VP of FC Goa, and he has also worked with Salgaonkar in the past. ProCam, which is going to be an interesting discussion when it comes up later. And also currently he's the director at Square Out Sports Solutions. Am I right, Rahul?
That's correct.
How are you doing?
Very well. Pleased to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. So let's just start. Before we get into the dirty business of trying to run a sports organization in the country, we would like to understand a little about your journey. And Ashish, as we were talking, I think you had a very unusual path into getting into the sports industry. So let me pick out a few things. One is that you were in a, let's say, a happy corporate cushy life. You used to be a runner. And then somehow the jump happened to Chennai. So why don't you just take us through how did you get into football management?
Yeah, sure. So I just saw one of the guys, I think it's Farhan, his name, who just asked he wants to do sports management.
Yeah.
And I don't know how old he is, but I wish 16, right? So wonderful. I wish at that age I had the kind of wisdom to tell myself not to follow the beaten path of doing engineering and getting a good job. But anyway, that's what I did. I'm a computer engineer by education, and I spent 20 years in the IT industry. Worked all over the world. Enjoyed it for a while, but the last 4 or 5 years, kind of started getting a feeling that this was not really my calling. So the point here is it took me 20 years to realize that. But I think today's younger generation seems to be much more aware of what's going on in the world. And they seem to be, wanting to do sports and sports management earlier. So all great. So basically, I was at a stage when I was running an IT company. It was a Chinese company. I was running its Indian operations. And that's when ProCam came into being with the Standard Chartered Mumbai Marathon.
Yeah.
And that's when I, along with lots of people I know who got caught the bug of running. So we started running, and from half marathon to full marathon to really got into the whole act. And that's when I started realizing that I want to do something else. I really am passionate about sports. I've done that in terms of IT. I met one gentleman out of the US who was thinking of doing something in sports in India. So we got together and said, hey, the only space that I knew was the running ecosystem, because I was a runner. So I said, let's take a jump. And I kind of quit my job and started what is called Dynamic Sports, which is my own little boutique sports management company. And we decided, instead of competing head on with, a Stand Chart Marathon, for example, which is a mass-based, large event, let's come up with certain kind of unique events. So we thought of 2 events. One was an event in Ladakh, which was, at that time, the first high altitude running event, which, as you can imagine, requires a person to come and acclimatize. So we created a whole program, like a 12-day program around, enjoying Ladakh and then running. And similarly, we created a property in Sula Vineyards, first vineyard theme run, where you kind of have a weekend at the vineyard, where you could do grape squashing, you can look at how wine is made, you can do a bit of wine tasting, you run. It's a kind of an active lifestyle kind of experiment. So we started off like that, did it for a couple of years. Bit of, very important. At least till the run is over, yeah. A couple of years into it, realized merely having passion doesn't really make it as far as a business is concerned, and really got serious about how do we really scale it up, make it into a viable business, and started looking at football as an area, because obviously football as an urban phenomenon in India is large at the grassroots level. Soccer mom, soccer dad is a reality, except right now we have a little break due to COVID, which we can discuss later. But, basically we were looking at doing some kind of a junior level countrywide league, etc., talking to a few possible sponsors. And that's when ISL came about. And, kind of in a way luck, in a way, all this last 2-3 years of dynamic sports that I had done kind of put me in a unique position where I was here, a guy who had spent about 20 years in startups, in multinational as well as Indian companies, working with youngsters, and also having spent some time in the sports ecosystem, who was ready to kind of take up a startup in football. And Chennai NFC basically was a startup. I think I was employee number one. The league was new. It was an extremely young team, players from all over the world. So I kind of fit in with the, experience that I had so far. And then, it's been 6 seasons of ISL. I spent 3 wonderful years at Chennai NFC. I would say really learning the trade. And then, somehow Delhi Dynamos came about. Being a true blue Bombay boy, I decided to move to Delhi, much to the opposition of a lot of my dear friends. But I did, and I must admit that I really fell in love with Delhi, and I really enjoyed my stay in Delhi. It was extremely challenging.
I just have to say one thing. You say all these, and then you moved the entire club to Odisha.
Yes. So, like I said, business and passion sometimes don't go that close together. So, if I had a choice, we would still be in Delhi. I'm sure our owners who had invested all this equity would love to be in Delhi for all the advantages which Delhi brings as the capital, metro, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. There were business reasons why it was not a sustainable football operation, whether it was the government support, whether it was a sponsor support, whether it was, we had a very strong, vociferous, passionate fan base, but very small. And we were not able to expand into your general public, who's looking at sport as an entertainment, which, like example, Goa is a great example, or cricket obviously has done a great job. And then we looked at various options, and Odisha came about. The government really gave us an extremely good, I would say, a package, which is a combination of support in infrastructure, marketing, some sponsorship support. And we went through that, 4-5 months of real hell of actually shifting. We had a little hiccup when we shifted to Bhubaneswar. The stadium wasn't ready, and we had to move to Pune for 3 games and then come back. So all that, we did all that. But as I look back, it was a great journey, great learning. And, Odisha FC today is, it's at a stage where they've got a great base from where they can really develop. And actually, I don't know, some of you, if you followed, today was actually the announcement of my tenure ending at Odisha FC. So it's been extremely good experience for me, moving out from computer engineering to IT to running to organizing running events to Chennai to Delhi to Odisha, and now I'm stuck in my house in Mumbai and speaking to you guys.
Well, that seems like good. There's one question I would want to come back to you, which is how was the first meeting you had with the owners of Chennai? But before that, I would ask Rahul, you had a straightforward life. You didn't have this colorful thingy which Ashish is talking about. You studied football management, then you worked, you came back, you managed all the big ones in Goa, and then with FC Goa you ended it. Is it because you're a Goan and you love football? Is that why you did this, or was there any other reason for it?
Well, I think, like they say, when you really want something to happen, the universe conspires to make it happen for you.
What? Is that Shah Rukh Khan dialogue, isn't it?
But I was really fortunate to have grown up in the vicinity of the stadium here in Goa. So literally a 5-minute walk from the stadium here in Goa. And I must have been about 7 years when the stadium was built in 1989. And came about in record time of 6 months. And I think since then, that love affair with football, of course, started playing even earlier, but that love affair started. But there's a precursor to the MBA in football industries, which is I started my career as an investment banker with Goldman Sachs, coincidentally. Although knowing full well that this is what I eventually wanted to do, given that, I realized pretty quickly I wasn't going to make it as a professional footballer. That would have been, the perfect life. But but as it's panned out, it's worked out not too bad.
Oh, Rahul, specifically, I think you worked with Salgaonkar and then FC Goa, and sorry, yeah, and then you were at Vasco as well, right? So you were at Vasco.
Vasco Sports Club. That's correct.
Correct.
Yes.
So how do you take, like, how is, I know you're working and you're like in a new job, and obviously the loyalties and passion lie, but what is the club you supported when you were young in Goa?
No, I have no qualms in saying, but grew up supporting Salgaonkar, and that kind of, in fact, made me move back from Bombay when the opportunity came about, because I thought it was, a perfect opportunity, a tick mark on my checklist to work for my boyhood club. So yeah, grew up supporting, but FC Goa didn't exist around then. It came about in 2014.
What did the Vasco guys say after you moved there?
They kicked them out of the Bichu gang.
The offices are not too far apart. Literally 5 minutes away again between Salgaonkar and Vasco. Yeah.
Yeah. Ashish, what about your first meeting with? Was Abhishek Bachchan in that meeting?
No, he wasn't in the meeting. It was the owners, so the Danis.
Okay.
So yeah, the meeting was quite interesting. I got a call. I knew them from before. So I got a call from them. I had read in the newspapers that they were interested or they were going to buy. There's something called Indian Super League coming up. And he asked me to meet him at Willingdon Club in South Mumbai. And we met there over breakfast. And it started off by the owners kind of not revealing what the purpose was. So we were just kind of beating around the bush, talking about politics, sports, life, etc. And suddenly I saw they had a notebook with a pen, and they started asking me certain questions on sports, ecosystem, football, the how a team is, the size of a squad typically, number of foreigners, this, that, all that. I had no idea where this was going, and we just kept on going. And maybe in hindsight, it was good because I was under no pressure, and it was just going smoothly till about 45 minutes into the conversation. They put the book, they closed the book and tell me, listen, we have bought a club in, it was not called Chennai. It was going to be a franchise based out of Chennai. And we need somebody to help us kickstart this whole operation. We know that you are doing something in sports. We don't know what exactly. We tried to figure out right now, but we are not clear. But would you help us get this started? And it took me 2 minutes to say, yeah, of course, this is right time, right place. As Rahul said, Qayamat decided that this is it. Everything had to get, come together. So, that's I jumped in, and next day I was in the office, and we just started with 2 people, 3 people, 4, and second year we won the league at Fatorda. That's a very interesting experience, by the way, where I had to spend the entire night at Margao police station, by the way.
Yes,
Rahul.
I mean, you're saying Rahul like Rahul had something to do with it. So.
No, I'm just, it's great to have him there. We have a lot of common memories. So
if he had something to do with it,
we'll always go down that one particular day in December of 2015. We'll always go down in Goan footballing history. For the better or for the worse, I wouldn't know.
But all I would say is one thing: Elano looked like a FC Goa kind of a player. But sorry. Talking about that.
So yes. Was Chennai the club that was actually shifted from Bangalore for the first round? I think it was called Bangalore Titans or something.
Something. No, I don't know whether it was Titans, but yeah, there was a Bangalore. There was obviously one of the other corporates involved, which then backed out, and then these guys jumped in, and then Abhishek Bachchan came in. Eventually, we also had Dhoni as a brand ambassador. That's when they decided to do Chennai, and in fact, it was a separate team that kind of attended the initial auction/draft. None of us were present. The new owners, neither me. We were present in the first draft, which selected the first Chennai FC team.
So Dhoni stepped in before you guys decided to move to Chennai. Was that? I always thought it was like the other way around. Like Chennai got formed and then Dhoni came in.
Chennai got formed and then Dhoni came in. And it was also a very interesting story of how we kind of introduced him to the media. If we have time, I can share that experience as well.
All right. So Rahul, let's just get into this.
I think he's probably like the city mascot by now, right?
Absolutely. Son of the soil.
I'm sure there'll be an ad of Dhoni eating idli and saying this is like the best idli and things like that. All right, Rahul. So let's just get into this. How hard is it to assemble a football team?
From the scratch, starting from scratch, it does take a while. I think you need a very strong core team, essentially, to put a squad together, like Ashish mentioned earlier. And you're talking of the whole the coaching, the coaching staff and a squad which invariably is between 25 and 30 players. And depending on the regulations and the guidelines of the number of foreigners, it definitely, if you're talking of the managements that sat on team formations in 2014, I can well assume it took them more than just a few months. With most of the squad now, what happens is once the squad is in place, and particularly if you have continuity with your coach, it's a lot simpler. You might lose, on an average, a couple of players, 3-4 players a season, but invariably, you already by then have backups, thought through, or players you want to kind of reach out to. So I think now, once a club is formed and is in existence for a couple of years, the process is a lot simpler. But 2014 certainly must have been a challenge.
So there's one thing you said there where you spoke about consistency. And you said if there's a consistency of philosophy, if there's consistency in coaching, it becomes easier, right? But I don't think that's a scenario which we see very often, where there is consistency in the way you want to play or coaches are given enough time. And this has nothing to do with Indian football in general. World over, this is where we're moving. So how hard does it become for people in operations, people who are supposed to decide who is it that we need to buy next year, to work in such a fluid environment where you are already constrained with the financials and now you're constrained with you don't even know if you're going to have a coach and it's a results business at the end of the day, right? So how hard does it become like in such a fluid structure?
Like you rightly mentioned, this has nothing to do with India. And some of my friends who've tuned in probably Chelsea fans. So look no further than Chelsea. For the number of coaches who've just been, whether it's Di Matteo, whether it's Avram Grant, Mourinho the first time round. There you go. But like you mentioned, clearly it's results driven. At FC Goa, we've been very fortunate. At least when I was there, I had the good fortune of working with just two coaches, Zico in his final year in 2016, and then Sergio Lobera, who was with the club until last year. So Goa, from that point of view, have been fortunate. Two coaches over 6 seasons, 3 years each. But I know a lot of the other clubs have had challenges with coaches particularly. And the coaches come in invariably with not only their coaching staff, but players they'd like to bring in, which now it depends on the management to an extent, to what degree you're prepared to kind of be flexible with the club philosophy and playing style and all of that. But invariably, they end up getting the better of the sweet deal. And I'm sure Ashish will be able to corroborate the statement.
Yeah. So Ashish, additional question on that is, when you joined Chennai FC, how many hours a day were you working and for how long did that continue? And how did you go about trying to assemble this whole thing, given that it was not a club? Initial bid was won by someone else, right? So you had to come in the last minute.
Absolutely. And actually, I was going to add to what Rahul was saying earlier. I think he's being quite humble in only talking about the technical aspects. But even from the operation standpoint, the first couple of seasons are difficult. You need to have the right team in place. And now coming to your question, I don't know if it's even possible to count. I think we obviously work crazy hours because especially in case of Chennai, as you rightly said, we were the last off the block. I think it was only in August, if I remember correctly, when we kind of really started, and October sometime was when the league was. So I remember day 1 in the office, day 2 office, day 3 flight to Chennai, day 5 back in office trying to hire people, at the same time trying to get a deal done with the Tamil Nadu Football Association, State Department, to get the football field done. So I think the first, say August to December, maybe let's say till November, once, the league had started and things had kind of settled in, it was sheer hard work. But like everything else in life, I think it didn't seem like a burden. It seemed like we were really having a great time. And I'll give you some examples. We were talking about Dhoni earlier, right? I mean, most iconic player. We decided that he's coming in. There were negotiations. He's coming in, not coming in, coming in. Finally, the deal happened. And it was decided that tonight we're going to reveal him. He's going to fly in a charter flight to Chennai. And we're going to have a press conference. So everything gets set. I am being designated to go and fetch him from the airport. So here I am excited, first time meeting him. Really, I don't know whether I'm really a CEO or I'm the fanboy, blah, blah, anyway. So I go there and he's, as we all know, very humble on a one-on-one basis. So we are talking football and he really knows football, right? So we are talking all this stuff and we are on our way to the hotel, and I have 5-6 missed calls from my operations team. And so should I pick it up? And I just pick it up and they say, hey, we have a small problem. I said, what? So we arranged everything. We got about 150 press. Everything's lined up, this, that, audio, visual, everything. We forgot to hire an MC. So the owners have told you are the MC. And again, so first time for me in life, running a football club, first time an MC, first time introducing somebody like whom I'm in awe of. But there's just a small example of, we were working continuously, but these kind of things kept on happening. Of course, when we won a game, the sheer joy of winning a game, the sheer joy of having 15, 20,000 odd people coming into the stadium, and then seeing, whatever we had done, the sheer joy of actually having sponsors giving you money coming into the bank. I think all that really overtook, whatever work we did. And I think for anyone who wants to kind of work in a football club or in any sports organization, as long as you are extremely devoted, hardworking, passionate, just it'll be an awesome experience.
And have emceeing skills.
Yeah, awesome.
But I'm glad like that was the problem that happened that day. Like only the MC didn't show up. What if they called you and they would have been like, Dhoni's still at the airport. Who are you with? Like, he looks different on TV.
It's actually Suresh Raina, not Dhoni.
Not Suresh Raina. It'd be like Saurabh Tiwari, right? With the hair.
Oh, yeah. So, Rahul, there's a question here, and I think I would like you to answer it. And along with such jobs, like, you need to basically be a multitasker and you need to be organizing a lot of things. It's more often than not, it's basically trying to get things done, right? And so did your university degree at any point, like how helpful was it when you actually started working in football?
I think to have a broad background in, from the business side of things really helps. Of course, today, thanks to several institutes in India who've started sports management courses, a lot more Indians are now, able to kind of get the degree and the professionalization. But passion is one thing, like Ashish mentioned, and it's great, but I think, having the background knowledge of the business of sport really, really helps. And I'm trying to think of examples where, this may have come in handy, but, with the current state of the league as it is, even through the initial years, the outlay of all of the clubs far exceeds the revenue that is generated. And so even little things like structuring a team, because in the initial years of the Indian Super League, the league spanned just 3 months.
Yeah.
So, do you have a full-fledged team that works 6 months, works through the year? Because you have to, once the season is over, you're already thinking about the next. Or do you have a small core team and then kind of, hire the guys on a contract basis? So all of that, I think it really helped, from that perspective, having a fair sense of how to run the business of sport and a football club in particular.
See, one thing what I wanted to ask was, this was a situation that quite a few of the major ISL teams faced, when it started with I-League already in the picture, and you had these well-defined, age-old fan bases across all these cities. What was it like to, how hard was it to set this new brand? At least in the first year, I'm sure you might have got a lot of these I-League fans who would have, probably attended just to see what's happening. It's a new club, but okay, it's not a rival. We don't know how long this league is going to last. Because I think when it came in, I was a fan of Mumbai FC, and Mumbai City FC also came into the picture, and I attended both games, like whenever they'd happen. But after a few seasons, when you realize that these things are here for the longer period, that's when, it does become a question, like, who do you support? Thankfully, it was easier in my case. Thankfully, wrong words to use, but Mumbai FC shut down. So we weren't left with an option. But in cases like Chennai, where you actually had the I-League champions, Chennai City, and even in Goa, where you had these really age-old clubs, how hard was it to, really build a fan base over there?
So, no, great topic of discussion. In Chennai, I think in a way we were a little lucky because the city does kind of rally behind its team, right? So if you look at CSK, like really crazy supporters. And similarly, when we started, also, of course, having Dhoni as a brand ambassador obviously helped. Kind of initially, got the crowd in. Initial days, ISL was kind of modeled around IPL, so there was this jazz and had a little festive kind of atmosphere. Carnival, exactly. So we realized that we were not selling many tickets, but we were able to get good 12 to 15,000 people in the stadium, and that created a very nice environment. And then luckily, the team kind of performed. And one of the things, talking about this consistency, Chennai was probably the only club where we had the same coach and the same key players for the first 3 years. So Marco Materazzi, his kind of coaching staff, along with, Ilano and Mendoza played a couple of seasons. He was not there. But, then also Mendy and some of the Indian players, JJ, etc., they were there through the 3 seasons. And we realized that from the time the second season, even before we won, when we had major floods, that's another exciting story for the operations guys, by the way. So, this kind of stuff, when it happened, we realized that the fans were really kind of becoming sticky, and they were coming in. Monetization, yes, is an issue. I don't think we were able to really get people to buy tickets or merchandise as we would have liked to. Maybe India is not a merchandising market. We've realized over 6 seasons, we can't ape everything out of Europe, right? I mean, we got to create our own model. So I think that was one. Chennai City came in a bit later. So there was a slight advantage. It wasn't that both came in together. Then the dynamic would have been very much like in Kolkata, where, you have this, or Goa, where you really have this issue and you have hardcore fans, where there could be division. My personal take is, if things do really settle down and ISL is going to be the, let's say the primary league, the main league, and once we have the relegation, etc. happening, you will have cross-club fans, where fans will support the top club, or, they will want their club to reach the top division. You think things will start kind of happening here, like what happens in the foreign market. But just to conclude, for Chennai, in a way, for both the teams, it's worked out great that Chennai City plays out of Coimbatore, and Chennai has been in the north, in north of Tamil Nadu. So in a way, they've been able to capture, the state. And this is something we were always debating. Would it have been right to call it like a Tamil Nadu team, or was it calling it Chennai and was the right? It's always a debate. But that's basically what it is.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is, I think in cricket, they're just getting even smaller. Like in Gujarat, there are three teams. Now there's a Saurashtra, there's a Baroda, and everything. So I think trying to capture an entire, but that is cricket. I don't know about football. Rahul, one thing is I've seen a few matches at Fatoda. Filling a stadium has never been a problem with you guys, right? But how is it? How do you get fans who are FC Goa fans and not Dempo fans, Salgaonkar fans, or any other fans?
Or general football, just
Yeah.
So just to take off, I think one, to begin with, I think Goa's been very fortunate from that point of view that we don't have any other franchisees from any other sporting disciplines. So I know with Chennai, for example, like Ashish mentioned, there's CSK, there's several other franchises. Bangalore, another great example, RCB and Bangalore FC and the works. With Goa, it's been only football. I'm aware that Mr. Dempo has now acquired one of the table tennis franchises, but of course, I'm talking up until now, it was only football. I think also what helped in a way was the families, the Dempo and Salgaonkar families who had I-League clubs were the first owners of FC Goa for the first 3 years. So I think for the fans, it was pretty simple, these guys own the I-League, we will. So I know a lot of people who in the initial years, were doing both, were going to the ISL games, given that ISL was a 3-month, league, and going to the I-League games because the I-League spanned until March invariably. So you still had the I-League games to go to post ISL. And I think, over the years, then grew that love affair, so today I did a recent interview where I said, I think the biggest satisfaction I have today is to see the number of traveling fans, fans traveling to away games. There was never there, at least early on, with the inception of the I-League, the NFL back then, I-League. We did try a couple of things when I was at Salgaonkar. Unfortunately, the numbers were really small. But, for example, the final played in Mumbai where Goa lost narrowly to Bangalore by a solitary goal. We must have had about 4,500 traveling fans from Goa to Bombay for that final, which was just incredible. And I think that will just grow, in the years to come. But like you said, I think with football, filling stadiums here has never been a challenge. Unfortunately, over the last 3 years, the three big ones in Goa have pulled out 3 of the 4, that is, with Salgaonkar, Dempo and Sporting having pulled out of the I-League. But Churchill brothers continue to play in the I-League. So right now, I think, there's enough space for both these clubs, given that we don't have any other franchise teams or the craze for cricket like there is in other parts of the country.
I have 2 questions on that. So one is, does FC Goa step in and help these traveling fans, with accommodation and at least transport? Does that happen? Or is that something that just happened initially in the first years?
No,
as a
I think we worked. So FC Goa basically has three co-fan clubs, and we worked very closely during my time there. We worked very closely with the fan clubs to subsidize their travel and stay. But I think what
I thought it was like Gaur Army, right?
Gaur Army, that's one of them, the East Lower Army, and But I think what really is passion that money can't really buy is when you have fans. So subsidizing travel and accommodation is, I think, the very least a club can do. But when you have fans traveling from Goa to, let's say, Jamshedpur for games by train, 40 hours travel, that is just incredible. For me, that is true passion, and nothing can beat that.
Man, I'm going to be this FC Goa fan. I need some of those subsidies. I'll just get on the bandwagon.
But yeah, it's very evident from what you pointed out, the whole one franchisee in the entire state thing across all sports. It's evident because I think when you do visit Goa, you do see a lot of these FC Goa jerseys around, season banners, probably a poster or something. It is that... something that I think Ashish mentioned earlier, buying merchandise. It's something that has come more naturally to Goa as compared to any of these other cities, because people are still I don't think initially probably Calcutta thought, this is our city's team, so let's set the rivalries aside. It's a common team. But when they realize that it's going to become the primary team, That's when they're like, let's step away.
That's when they changed the ownership, got new owners. Then they're like, oh, let's get Mohan Bagan in and all of that.
What do we do with 80K now? Like,
but I think next year they stand to benefit the most. A combination of 80K, Mohan Bagan, not just from the technical standpoint, the coaching staff, the players. Of course, the coach has moved on, but everything. I think they have the best of both worlds, and with the fan base, I'm really curious to see how that's going to play. Ashish,
I'm going to be the devil's advocate here, man. Imagine the work they need to do to get these two together, man. The project is going to be insane to get a common brand, common club. I remember, even if you guys remember,
they've launched the logo, so they've already taken step one. It's like
no. I know. I'm just saying from the operation standpoint. Just imagine it's going to be.
Marketing ने तो काम कर लिया अपना.
It's
operations वाले तुम लोग देखो, हमने logo mix कर दिए.
If you guys remember the official announcement which happened when 80K Mohan Bagan announced, the final line said that we will ensure that the Mohan Bagan fans will keep on getting their tickets.
Wow, so condescending.
and that's what caught me, and I said, Raghu's got a tough job to get this consolidation going, man.
If anyone asked me for my opinion, I would say just junk 80K and call it Mohan Bagan. It would help so many things. You would, just continuous Mohan Bagan. You would get all that loyal fan base built up over generations of families, right?
Absolutely.
So why not? Yeah, but no one listens to me or what I say. So here we go.
So the historical records, what do they keep? Do they keep the I-League ones or do they keep the ISL ones? Like, how does it work? Because you remember, Saru, this happened with, not the same thing, but something similar happened with Wimbledon in the UK with MK Dons and in the whole rivalry.
Correct.
One club came in, took the other's name. The other one came in and, created a new identity. And now they're above them in the league. So, I mean, who keeps whose records now? And that should basically decide what the club should be called, I think.
Yeah, I'm actually more on Ashish's side in this. I mean, on that particular topic. How do you have to get those fans on board and make them feel like they're wanted, they're part, and it's still their club, right? That is hell of a marketing challenge. It's actually a marketing problem. Logo is nothing. Logo, so you and I could have made and put it out. It's the things which come after that.
We probably did.
I think they need solid marketing experience and solid politics experience.
Yeah. All right. So on that thing, I don't know who is a better person to answer this. First of all, running a football club, you should not have an ego anymore, right? Because all your ego is destroyed managing egos of everyone else. Correct. So
Ashish is like, it's so true.
You may have to move the damn club from one city to another, yeah? Forget ego.
Oh man, we still haven't discussed that, yeah. I mean, dude.
Okay, before we get to that, there is a question here, but I think I'll slightly modify the question because I don't think it's fair for any of you to answer this in the way it's asked. It says how difficult or easy it is to manage an ISL franchise versus IPL franchise given limited finances. So let's take the limited finances part, right? We know money is in short supply, and I think Rahul, some time ago, you said that spending is more than earned revenue, right? So in that, significantly. So when that's the case, there is enormous pressure on you guys to basically produce results on the pitch, off the pitch, whatever you're asked to do. And I'm sure I don't know whether you'll agree or not, but there must be a lot of pressure from the owners as well. How do you ensure what is priority then when outflow is so much more than inflow?
I think, of course, without any doubt, it is extremely difficult. Like I said, when you look at the business aspect of it, it's an extremely difficult proposition. Running a football club, I think anywhere in the world is difficult. In India is, extremely difficult. Compared to IPL, yes, I would say considering that, like Rahul said, the difference between the expense and revenue is quite large. One must really thank the owners, whoever it is, who have so far invested, whether it's I-League, whether it's second division, whether it's ISL, and they continue doing that for whatever reason. I think what has happened, if you see in the first 6 seasons, most of us, and when I say us, the ISL clubs have really fine-tuned on our operational models in terms of expenses. So I think the efficiencies, a lot of them have already been kind of squeezed out. So whether it comes to the team's travel, their stay, the food, the kits, the stadium operations, the player salaries, the coaches, the management staff, office, you have various buckets under which your expenses come. You also have certain which you don't have too much control over, which is your franchise fees, for example. Right. So, these are things that we have kind of all looked at. Various clubs have come up with different strategies. And I think going forward, there's only so much more that each club can do. So the pressure is tremendous because the top line needs to grow. One thing that has happened is one part of the top line, which is your central rights revenue, that has increased over time. So we must thank the league, the FSDL, for increasing that year on year. So that has definitely helped. But now for individual clubs, we are still a sponsor-driven market because maybe other than Goa, I don't know if any other club really makes money on tickets. It's very, very small, the amount. So to really get these sponsors in, you're competing not only with the big daddy of cricket in India, but you got the EPLs and La Ligas of the world. And, there's too many options out there for brands today. Why should they invest in an Odisha FC, for example, right? Or why should they invest in let's say, Bangalore FC? And now I think, we are still very young as a league, but having spent about 6 years, you will start seeing a differentiation in a way. Odisha FC or an FC Goa will look for revenue or sponsors, which may be more local sponsors, but 20 of them giving smaller tickets versus a large BFC with a corporate background may get one or two large things. And then you have a Mumbai City with their tremendous resources coming in now with the investment from CFG. You'll start seeing very different models. So that's number one. The number two part of a footballing ecosystem worldwide, and still we are far away from there, is to develop your transfer fee incomes. And this is something some clubs will start developing. So at Odisha FC, for example, we are making, effort to get our academy in order. The style of play that we spoke about, now that last 3 seasons consistently we are playing in a certain manner. So the coach that now gets chosen, we are very clear in the kind of, please excuse me if an Odisha FC guy is listening to this, I keep on saying we out of habit, but Odisha FC will get a coach that will follow that style of play. We will have an Indian assistant coach and head of youth who will follow the same style of play, which means we will have youngsters coming through the system. Some of them will come into the team and reduce our cost of players. Some of them we will be able to transfer them out and earn revenue. So we are, let's say, 5-6 years away from creating these kinds of revenue streams. So it's going to be an extremely difficult journey. But next 1.5 years, even more difficult because of COVID. But I think given the way, overall, if you forget the COVID scenario, the Indian economy is growing, disposable income is growing, the interest from other parts of the world in investing in the Indian sports and football ecosystem, I think you will start seeing the green shoots.
Yeah. Rahul?
Yeah, I think Ashish has rightly touched upon most points, and particularly with streamlining operations where, over the years, the net losses have significantly come down by virtue of, reducing the losses. I think another very interesting point Ashish made is all the clubs now, that philosophy, even with FC Goa, the philosophy has been passed down from the first team right down to even their grassroots programs. So all the age group teams, they're under 13s, under 15s, under 18s, play the same style of football, which is great. And in fact, over the last 2-3 years, a couple of players have already been drafted into the first team. In fact, a great example was at the final in Mumbai when, Mandar, the captain, very early on was kind of injured. Xavier Gama, who's a youngster, 19-year-old, born, bred in Goa, has come through the system, was drafted in, to take his place. So great story there. But I think that again, reduction in the number of foreigners, all of that will reduce costs. I think one point that I'd like to mention here, which I think, could benefit clubs in the long run, is infrastructure. Because I think that's where, and Ashish will probably agree with me, a lot is spent currently by clubs. And given the amount of money that's being lost year on year, to have to spend that additional sum, on infrastructure, because across the country, most stadiums are owned by the governments. And so you end up, spending significantly. But if the ISL franchisees invest in full-fledged residential academies with possibly to begin with, even if you're looking at the next 10, 15 years, you may not need stadiums with capacities larger than 20,000, if you ask me. Goa may be a challenge, but I think most cities, 15, 20,000, you'll be comfortable having, most of the fans in and giving them a great experience,
Yes, extremely well put, Rahul. And, all the factors that he spoke about were the factors that we kind of used when we negotiated our transfer to Odisha. So and finally we were able to get the stadium rental for free, the practice pitches for free, the academy hostels, accommodation for free, in addition to the marketing support that the government gives and sponsorship. So, it's very key to get these costs under control. Like Rahul said, luckily the stadium Kalinga has capacity of only 14,000 odd. So, I think it's perfect for football today. In today's scenario in India, where we were getting 9,000 odd people in the stadium, I'm sure we can get 12, 13,000 in next season. So, coming back to my original point, a lot of these expenses. So, for example, for now Odisha FC going forward, these expenses are already very efficient. Right now, they need to look at, how can they further reduce something else, which is very, very difficult. And you don't want to go to a stage where you reduce expenses so much that you start affecting your quality of the players or quality of the coaches, right? So you don't want to go beyond a certain limit there. So it's a balancing game, and it's a very interesting thing. And my main thing here is now, going forward, it's going to be different for different clubs. And that's the interesting part.
I think the more interesting part is that you have a unique stadium name, unlike the 90% of the stadiums in the country, which are called like Jawaharlal Nehru. Rahul, what is the stadium name in Goa?
It's called there's only one.
Must have been such a thing. Kalinga. Yeah, this sounds different. I can't put a finger on it, but something is different about this. I'll quickly take a question.
I was just saying, interestingly, although they have the same name, they go by different initials across the city. So I think in Delhi it's JLN. We know it as PJN, but they're all Jawaharlal Nehru stadiums, but PJN, JLN, somewhere else it's some other initial. So I think that's the only differentiating factor.
Ultimately, you've got only 9 possibilities then, right? I mean, you're going to run out of that also soon.
Next year, it will be called Kalinga Nehru. Who is this new person? All right.
Quickly take a question that has come in. Farhan again has asked, I think he's looking for sports management. And, if off the top of your head, are there any recommendations for universities in India that you can probably recommend, or abroad, that would, I think, help Farhan plan out his career in an even better manner than he's already done. Because Ashish is already impressed that at 16, he already knows what he wants to do, right?
Fantastic.
At 16, I was waiting for my board exam marks, to decide what I have to do in life, right?
All right, Rahul. So, which are the good courses, if anyone has to?
I think GISB, is doing a phenomenal job.
This is the one with Neil, is it?
Yes, Neil's in charge of that one. India on Track, basically. So, Gaurav Motanel and Vivek Sethia. And, of course, Nilesh Kulkarni is doing a fantastic job with IISM. Coincidentally, I have 2 interns currently with me from IISM. These are the 2 at the top of my head. But I think Symbiosis also has a program in sports management. So, yeah.
No, right. Ashish, a totally random question. And the question is this. How many fans are there who are willing to pay money in this and go to a stadium in India? If you had to just take a guess at that number, what would that be?
Oh, that's a difficult one. You're talking about football fans who will pay money and come to the stadium, right?
Yes.
So let's do some math here. We had about average 4,000 people buying tickets in Odisha. I think the number must be what, 12, 13, 14,000 in Goa? What's the number, Sunil? Rahul?
Official, well, it probably would have got to that, Ashish, but we had to give away so many passes. So, we eventually 10.
All right. So
10
that's
yeah.
10. All right. So I think given that in Delhi we probably had 1,000 or less, let's say maybe the average is 2,500, 3,000 across all the 10 franchises. So you got say 30,000 of these people in a week who'll pay for it. This is a very high level kind of dirty math I'm doing here, but basically the number's small. We have not figured out yet the optimal number, neither the optimal price, because it's always a factor of, people are willing to pay $10,000 to go and sit in the shitty Wankhede Stadium North Stand, but they are not willing to pay $100 to come to the football ground. So
why do you think
in Odisha, for example?
Sorry, why do you think that is? Like,
Right.
100 to 10,000 is a big difference, right?
Yes. Yeah. Multiple factors according to me. I think it's different city to city, but in a place like Bombay or Delhi where you have a lot of entertainment options, football unfortunately doesn't come as high in priority. So if I had to spend $500, let's say on a movie show, I may do that, but not do it in ISL. Number two, and this is something we all are to blame, in order to fill stadia, we have created a habit out of giving away tickets.
Yeah.
So I would say that's a factor where we have to slowly move away from. And we had a great a great discussion with the Odisha government over this, because they were obviously very keen that the stadium is full, right? Because you never know who shows up for the match, and they are a stakeholder. And I had a very difficult but very productive discussions with them on why we shouldn't do that and why we shouldn't just fill it up. It is very easy for government to fill up 12,000 people, but we shouldn't do that, and we should restrict that number and try. And then we were able to sell 4,000. They realized that, okay, maybe there's a learning which they can take to hockey. And I think this is a learning we can take across the country for all football franchises, where there will have to be a balance between stadia fill and people, and slowly people will buy tickets. And in today's day, what's $100? I think a person who pays $100 will pay 200, will pay 250, will pay 300. And then you need to have a way of upscaling it. You put a kind of a package, you buy 300 and you get $50 worth of, maybe Coke or chips or something in it, and make it, using an app. And there's lots of things that we can do once people are going to be allowed back into the stadium.
You'd probably spend more money, traveling to the stadium than just paying for the match tickets. And that is actually interesting, because I think, Rahul, correct me if I'm wrong, but FC Goa was one of the first clubs to actually come out with this packaged membership that he just mentioned.
Absolutely.
So, before I get to that, I think I just need to put in an observation here. I think, Saru, now we know why Delhi switched to Odisha, because Delhi being the capital of the country, the number of tickets you guys would have had to give out, I'm sure. The number of Babus asking for tickets.
Wait, but I didn't see them also at the stadium. So
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why.
Tickets.
I'll tell you why. All the Babus only want tickets that say VVIP. It can't even be VIP.
Right.
So we had this whole section which we had to call VVIP and owners and lounge, and this is nonsense. Anyway, that section was always full, and that was not TV facing. That section was full. There was a bar there. There was a food there. These people came there, had a good time. They didn't watch football. They weren't interested in football, but they did come. But yeah, I mean, that's the problem in Delhi.
Man, I remember this like 10, 15 years ago. There was India playing an international football match in Bangalore. And I think the ticket was like $100 for a VIP section, where basically I got a chair, I got a sandwich, and I got a bottle of water. It was so much fun.
Same thing. I think even in I-League, when they used to sell VIP tickets, you used to get like a small pouch, like a small Tetra pack of Maaza or something.
Yes.
And there used to be like this small samosa packet with one potato chip inside it.
Yes.
Packaged in plastic. So, I mean, that was what the VIP experience then was. But Saru, I mean, the last game we went to was again the VVIP. Hero, ISL, Launch 1, Launch 2. Yeah. And I think we used to spend more time munching on chicken sandwiches than watching the game, right?
Yeah,
because
it used to be it's not only an Indian phenomenon. If you look at if you go to, I'm sure you guys may have gone to games in Europe. If you end up in the director's lounge, you see when the half time's over, that's the only section which is empty. Because those guys are still having their beer and strawberries and whatever they do, and they're coming back.
Famous, I think, was it, who was it, Cantona or Giggs or somebody who came up with that phrase, the shrimp cocktails section or the prawn cocktails.
Yeah, but what they didn't realize is the shrimp cocktail section is the one who pays their exorbitant salaries. So there's always a thing.
Anyway, so coming to that, Rahul, the membership that you guys came up with, I think it was a proper, very well-defined package. Yeah. How did that go? Like, was that a hit or...
So we realized, one, just to take you back, like Ashish mentioned, and we've been discussing, prices here across I-League were invariably in the 50 to 100 range.
Yeah.
And then when, FC Goa came about, at least over the last few years, the cheapest ticket has been priced at around 250. 250. So it's a significant jump. And the West Stand goes up to about $1,000. Mm-hmm. And you do have people paying. But we realized that, in every city, you have to realize, and I think Ashish hit the nail on the head by saying that in cities like Delhi and Bombay, there's so much else, in terms of distractions. And football will clearly not be high up on the priority list. But in Goa, it's a different situation. And we realized that if we target people, particularly those with money who wouldn't mind splurging that money, but we pamper them, there's no reason why they wouldn't. So from suddenly spending, 100 or 250 to watch an I-League and ISL game, people were paying as much as 18 to 20,000 bucks for the top end of the membership. And we had a sizable number there only because they were assured that they'd be pampered and have the whole experience at the stadium, to be seen there in those seats and all of that. But yes, I think the VIP culture here, I think every stadium across the country, we had to extend VIP lounge, and we seat capacity of about 500 between owners, VIP, VVIP. We've tried to merge it all, Sponsors. But that is the only section that's always completely full. Yeah, 500. But that's what worked well because we, I think, structured the whole membership across, price brackets to kind of target different demographics. And I think that kind of sold well and still continues to.
Yeah, there's a suggestion. Let's just call the stadium VVIP. It will solve your problems. All right. As much as this...
I think one last question. Let's take the whole COVID situation that has come in. I think for a fledgling league, even though it's been like 6 years now, how do you think that's going to affect... is it going to affect at all? Because in India, I think we guys are just waiting to go back into crowded spaces, looking at how things have been during the lockdown. So, Rahul, do you think that's going to affect?
No, I think, and there will be a precedent in terms of other sporting events that will be held. For all possibly even the IPL will be held sooner. If at all, I think this year they might, just to take every precaution in the book, they might opt to play behind closed doors. But I think sport, offers something that most other industries fail to or unable to. It's about raw emotion. It's about finding great solace. Sorry, I'll just take a minute here. But when you talk about sport, I think one moment that kind of stands out for me is when Nelson Mandela walked out prior to that 1995 Rugby World Cup final. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's etched in history, and that's what sport is. That nation was crumbling. It was at war between the blacks and the whites, and what that one World Cup did, and with South Africa winning that World Cup, it just kind of just completely turned around a nation that was kind of war-torn almost. Yep. So I think it might take a little longer, but I think sport will bounce back bigger and better.
So I think I completely agree. I think when it comes to elite sports, so whether it's La Liga, EPL, or ISL, IPL, they'll find a way. So there could be hiccups along the way. Maybe this season will be shorter. There'll be less sponsors, etc. No crowds, but they'll find a way. There'll be technology, there'll be digital, there's fan engagement. One of the international panels I heard, people saying that the boundary now between fans who are at the stadium and fans who are at home or in our case, those who are at the quarantine center watching the match it's all blurred now, right? So, people will become innovative, and there will be technologies which will make the experience even better watching from remote, and elite sport will find a way. My biggest worry is, and this is where Rahul probably will have much bigger say, is the grassroots sports. Today, kids have stopped playing in India. And, when will the parents get the confidence to get their kids to start playing, which means your youth level sports at the ground, gully cricket or gully football or whatever you call it, from there to people going to academies to, eventually creating a pyramid where, your base of the pyramid has to be big. And today it doesn't even exist. And I don't know whether it's linked to the schools reopening or, I don't know. But I think we really need to focus on that as a nation. And I don't know if we are really giving it a thought right now.
All right. We need to wrap up. As interesting as this conversation is, and I think Baru and I can go on for like 3-4 hours more. We haven't even spoken about pro cam running. I mean, all the things we spoke about, right? But we are running out of time. So final question.
Probably like a sequel or something later, we could probably look at that.
Yeah, we should like sequel 1, 2, 3. Like, let's just get a Harry Potter series on football and sports management. Yeah. So the last question is, what has been the hardest thing, like the most difficult thing you had to deal with in your sports management career? Ashish, why don't you start and then Rahul can take it?
The most difficult thing.
Most challenging, difficult.
I see. I think it's all relative. I can think of a lot of examples, but I'll tell you one which hit me the most in terms of I was the most nervous executing it. And if you see the scene in Moneyball, the movie Moneyball, where the youngster has to sack a player, he goes through that and he sees the reaction, and it's just completely different. So I had to. The players were kind of in revolt season 1. They wanted us to announce the bonus structure if the team reached semi-final, final, etc. And we had no idea, how a bonus structure in football works. And then you have people like Marco and Ilano and World Cup players, and looking at me to kind of deliver a bonus structure. And my team basically told me, Ashish, run with it. This is the total amount we have. Figure out a structure. And I must have spent 2 days agonizing over, how they'll react, whether they'll kill me or they'll think I'm a fool. Then I took a flight to, I think we were playing in Kochi. So we went to Kochi, and before the match, the pre-match meal that the players have, I had a meeting with, Marco, Ilano, and 4 of them. And I went there with his heart beating and said, this is our offer. And there was a stunned silence for 2 minutes, and they told me to walk out of the room. And in 5 minutes, they called me back, and they shook my hand and saying, accepted.
What?
Wow.
It was difficult in the sense you were agonizing over it. The players seemed such good people.
Absolutely. So sometimes we take too much pressure on ourselves. But I think the pressure that I took for that particular incident probably one of the highest.
Yeah, I can imagine, given that it's new for you as well, trying to get that right.
Yes.
Yeah. Rahul?
I think was when I joined FC Goa actually in 2016. It happened about 45 days prior to the season starting. And there was the whole thing about the ownership, because the ownership had just changed hands at that point. And so was thrown in the deep end straight away. And here we were with Zico and team planning to really keen on the preseason tour to Brazil with 45 days for the season to start, which they eventually did go 5 days, post me joining. They did have a shortened preseason, but that spent about 25 days there. But yeah, just having that first game, it got to a point where on the day of our first home game here in Goa, kickoff at 7:30 till 6:30, we did not have permissions in hand. Permissions were actually revoked at 6:15 with a show cause notice sent to me for whatever. And the gates were finally opened at 7. So the teams are inside now, but none of the fans were let in until about 7:10 with 20 minutes to go is when the final permission came through. So that has to be.
Was this 2014, the first game?
No, 2016 actually.
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
And
Because,
and the ownership just changed.
What Ashish is saying is that every year this happens.
No.
Ashish is trying to fit. Was he in jail at that point or not?
This was on a lighter note. First game that FC Goa hosted was against Chennai FC. So I was wondering if that was it.
But was it the first game or the third when you were in the police station?
This is the first season, first game.
First season, first.
It all connects.
Yeah. Ashish, Rahul, thank you very much. This has been so much fun, and we would like to obviously chat more. And Baru and I will be in touch with you guys to see how we could do it in some other form and capacity. But this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for spending your time. You've taken a lot of time of your day, and you generously shared enough stories and information with everyone. I don't know why you guys do this job. It seems just so pointless at the end of it, but I guess once you love something, you just need to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for coming in.
See you soon. Bye,
Sure.
Rahul. See
Thank
you.
you.
Ashish.
Thanks for having
Bye-bye.
me.
Guys, take care.
Bye-bye. All right. That's it for the show, guys. Thanks a lot and see you soon. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money and Intel. We appreciate their support. It's been a really fun week, guys. We've had some great episodes on your old favorites. Cyrus Says, Advertising is Dead, Edges and Sledges, Football Shitball had a really fun episode as well. Definitely do check it out. I'm sure you're going to enjoy yourselves. And thanks for listening, and we hope to catch you again next week.
Remember the last vacation you took? What about the one you took 3 years ago? Okay, how much do you really remember? It's a question I've asked myself often over a decade of traveling the world. Hey, I'm Utsav, and I do not travel the world for a living. I have a full-time job and responsibilities, but I have made traveling the world a priority. Priority enough that I negotiate extra leave in my job contracts, obsessively track my frequent flyer miles, and I'm willing to take off at the sight of a cheap ticket. Yes, I am cheap. I have lived and worked in 3 countries. I understand human behavior for a living. And these experiences have given me unique insights into places, people, and culture. With over a decade of travel behind me, I increasingly realized one thing, that we cannot see everything. So whatever we see, we must see deeply. Because as the film of memory decays, the imprints which will stand the test of time are the ones felt by the immersion of the senses, not by fleeting encounters with them. Postcards from Nowhere is an immersion into the world of slow travel, one story at a time. Tune in every Thursday on the IVM Podcasts app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.